Hello, it's Steve. Today we're going to be starting a new series where we port Brainless Raider over to Bevy. For those of you who don't know, Brainless Raider is... I have a devlog video on it from a little while ago on the channel. It's one of several games that it was made for a Trijam. That's a 3-hour game jam. It's an awesome game jam. And I figured I've been interested in Bevy for a while, and I've poked around with it for a while, but it seemed like a cool project to try and port over to pick up what I can about Bevy and share some of that with you. So that's what we're going to be doing. So if you're not familiar with Bevy, which I assume you are since you clicked on this video, Bevy is a Rust-based game engine based with an entity component system type structure. But anyway, this isn't a video covering the features of Bevy, and it's not a video covering the features of Tiled, but I'm going to go a little bit into Tiled since Bevy out of the box does not have a scene editor. And since this project is using tile maps, and I've used Tiled before a while ago, Tiled seemed like an excellent option for porting something I had already made that had an editor. So, first of all, let's take a look at what we're porting. So I'm going to jump over to Godot here. Let's see, maybe not this level. This is a good example level. It has one of every object type that is in this game so far. So let's go through a few things that we need to make. First of all, obviously the floor layout and tile map, and also placing objects around the level. Let's go into one of those objects. So that's fairly straightforward. The only data I need here, truly, are stuff like collision layer and the direction and maybe target treasure, although I think target treasure I'm going to just save in some property somewhere in the level instead, if I can, or save it separately. I'll figure out what to do with that later. A few other, let's look at a couple more of these. Some of them are going to be really easy, like pit. It doesn't even have any properties, it just, since it's a pit, when you collide with it, you're going to do pit things. So that's fairly straightforward. Same goes with planks and that sort of thing. The teleporter is probably one of the more complicated ones, as it works in tandem with portals. And it just has, again, a sprite, a tile location, which this one doesn't even need a tile location really, but it also has a reference to an entrance portal, which we can do that in Tiled just fine, and also a set of exit portals. That's going to be a little bit more awkward, but not too bad. So really, we're just going to be storing all this data in Tiled. So let's jump over to Tiled next. Oh, actually, wait, before I jump over to Tiled. So on the logic end of things, there's a few, let's look at the adventurer script right now. As it stands, the adventurer script does a whole bunch of things. It's kind of best to not think about this in terms of one-to-one functionality, but like, what does it do, and how can we do that same thing in a different system? So really what it's doing is it's moving itself to its next destination every time it reaches its destination, and underneath the hood, the parent follower here is keeping itself up with the adventure. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna necessarily use this exact paradigm, but we can see that that's gonna be something we're gonna have to implement down the line. Another big thing is collisions. Now here I have basically all the collisions the player cares about directly in the player. I believe I chunked a few more of these out into the tile mover itself. So if we look into here, basically anything that implements tile mover is going to also do all of these things, which are all pretty straightforward. This is just to share some code between Adventure and Goblinoid. I'll be really interested in seeing how this all works in the components and systems of Bevy. And then also stuff like level transitions and all the other, miscellaneous logic in the game, clicking on stuff, all that. So without further ado, let's open up Tiled. So I've already made a new project here. The first thing we're going to want to do, let's make a new map. Actually, let's start by making a new tile set. And this is saving a TSX. I'm going to look into that a little bit more down the road, but you see there's some extra data associated with just this tile set. And that's something we're going to have to contend with when we port this to Bevy. So next up, let's make a map. Let's make our first map. Probably not going to see very many more of the other pop-ups, and I don't think I'm going to really bother dealing with it, but for now, here we are. So this is going to be an orthogonal map. We're going to just do a CSV so it's easier for us to parse the data. That's not going to be a huge map anyway. Write down sounds fine. I'm sure actually write up is probably better, but whatever. 30, I'm going to do 30 by 30. I'm not going to do an infinite one because I want to make this as easy on myself as possible to try and parse this format, and that'll make a little bit more sense why I'm doing that later, I believe. So let's hit OK, and here we are. So a brief overview of the map editor. This isn't really obviously a tutorial on Tiled, but just to make sure we all know what we're looking at, we have some layers over here. If you've ever used an image editor, that's basically the same. Here's our tile set, so I can start drawing things like that. As well as there's properties. I believe this is properties of the map itself. There's also, let's say this one is floor, and make a new one for objects. See, I made an object layer there, which is different than a tile layer. So you don't see the tile thing anymore. I need to do insert tile. So let's start with like a little bit of a floor. I mean, I'm not going to use this map, but let's do a little square guy there. Zoom in. Yeah, we'll do like a figure 8. That's fun. Cool. That's a dungeon if I've ever seen one. Now let's insert an object. So we can just place the player like that. That's pretty neat. Meanwhile, we can also do like our enemies. We can do pits. Pretty cool. We can do planks to cover up the pits if we want, as well as little trigger guys to set and unset planks. Let's do another trigger guy down here and attach a couple of portals to them. So there we go. Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple, but it's almost that simple. So let's actually make this a little bit easier on ourselves and copy one of the maps that we've already done. Alright, there's the basic layout. Now let's throw a portal in here first. Actually, wait a second. I already made a mistake. I don't want to put it on this layer. I want to put it on the objects layer. So let's lock this. Snag the objects layer. Now you can see I'm pulling it around. Actually, let's not start with the portal. Let's start with the adventure. Cool. So how are we going to edit the data of this guy? So we can go into selection mode here, so we can select objects. And I'm going to go into the custom properties. And that's where we're going to add the direction. We said we weren't going to do treasure tracking on the adventure themselves, which is probably for the best. That was just a game jamism. Alright, there we go. We have the add property pop up now. And I'm going to do ints for the direction. There's going to be 2 ints, and then we'll do dir x and dir y. And this is going to be his facing direction. So at this point it's right, so it'll be 1, 0. So now that'll represent a vector to the right. I would love to put this in a vector property, but there isn't a vector property. That's fine. So that's all the data we need for the player right now, with the exception that now every time we want to place a player, we're going to have to go in and click them and then go in and add these properties. I don't really want to do that, so let's switch them over to a template. To do that, let's right click them and go to save as template. So now that I saved the adventure as a template, I can actually drag in another one, and you'll see that they have grayed out, but as is, dir X and dir Y, and of course I can come in and change these if I want to. But we don't need to do that right now, so goodbye other adventure, and let's do the same thing for goblinoids. Alright, another thing about this is that we're not going to be able to differentiate these two in code. If you look over here in the object properties, it's really hard to tell other than maybe reading the template file. So I'm going to actually go in and change. I want to use class because why not? I like class better than name personally. If I wanted to have two adventures that were both the same sprite but had different names, I could do that. So let's do class, because all adventurers should theoretically be working the same way. Enter. Let's override that template. And same thing with goblinoid. And let's just keep on trucking. Let's look at the map again to see what else we need to do. Okay, so an interesting point here, we can still use the same sprite but just give it a different class now. This one will be the teleporter. It's going to take in 2 object references, I believe. Oh no, it's an entrance portal object reference and a list of exit portal object references. So let's do object entrance and exit 0. Is that how I'm doing it over here? Yeah, okay. So 0 indexed. And let's actually make a new one. Exit 1. There we go. So we've got entrance, exit 1, exit 0. Before I set those, let's go ahead and save this as a template. Now this might seem like a lot of work. Let's also save the entrance and exit portals. Portal entrance. And I think these portals actually have a target portal themselves, right? Yeah, okay, so they also have an exit portal. So let's add exit object to that, and then I can save this as a template. All this saving as template might seem annoying, but really that's because this is 3 hours of entities all being compressed into one layout. So there's a lot to do here at the end of the day. So that's saved. This one has a template. So this is going to be the portal exit. Portal exits. And this is going to have direction. Dir X, dir Y, because we're going to need to tell whatever entity goes into these portals what direction they have to exit at. And that's good. For this one in particular, it's going to be left. Let's save this as a template. Portal exit. So that's portal exit and portal entrance. And then I can set the entrance here. Let's actually make a new portal exit over here somewhere. They're going to go 0, -1. That's up. And now I can also reference exit 0. I'm going to use exit 0 as my initial active portal. Alright, so now we have all the data in place for our tiled map. So this should be all the game really needs. Now I'm going to go and do this for all the other levels as well, so that we can have a full set of data to test with and just jump right into Bevy in the next episode. But this is pretty much where we're going to stop it for now. Except first we're going to go look at the format of these files. Alright, here we are in Visual Studio Code. Here's our tile map that we just made. Actually, I probably should be calling this 4 since it's the 4th level, but whatever, I'll go back to that eventually. There's a few, as you can see, there's a few files here populated already, and then source is going to be where we're going to have our actual Bevy code, but that's empty right now. So let's look at a few of these things. First off, the tile map. This is the big one. Pretty easy to see that this is where the tile data is. If I highlight one of the zeros, you can see that that's basically the layout, or in fact it is exactly the layout of the map that we just made. So that we're going to have to be able to load these in and parse what type of tile they are. To help us with that, we have a bunch of context information around this. So things like orthogonal, I'm not even going to worry about because we're making a tool specifically for our game. So there's no real reason to try and make it generalized. I'm not trying to ship this tool as a multi-use tool. Same thing with render order. Width and height, I'll probably still also keep these at 30/30, but I might parse this data anyway just to be safe. Same thing with tile width and tile height. We got infinite, that's where that would be stored. All sorts of cool stuff. I don't know what next layer ID and next object ID are, but I'm sure they're useful in some way. It also has a nice reference to a tile set here, which we're going to look at. And then layers. I'm not even going to worry about layers because I don't think I'm going to have anything other than just the floor layer of tile data. But down here, this is going to be very useful, and this is our set of objects that are spawned. For some reason, oh, I haven't saved. I need to save. Why didn't I save? I gotta save my file. Save. But here's our objects that we've spawned. As you can see, there's some of these properties that are saved in this file, and some of these that are completely empty. You know, Goblinoid has direction X and direction Y, but the reason that that's not here is that if we go into Goblinoid, those properties are saved as defaults in this template file. And this is what the template file is. It's really a pretty small thing, but it has a reference to what tile set it uses. It also has the same format, for more or less, as the object properties in the map itself. So that's great. We're going to have to be following this template reference and then combining these properties with the ones that are on the template in a way that works. So that's pretty doable, and this is just XML, so since this is just XML, it should be fairly simple and straightforward to do. I call it simple, fairly simple for making an entire level editor. And finally, the last thing to look at over here is the sprites TSX, and this is really small. This is basically just saying, it's giving some metadata around the sprites that we're using. It has tile width and tile height, it has our count, and the columns. This is saying that, hey, there's 9 columns of information here, and assumedly, since there's no row property, there's 1 row. Alright, so this is where I'm going to stop it for this episode. Next time we're going to do our basic Bevy setup, as well as import some libraries for messing with XML and rendering, well, maybe not rendering it to the screen, but rendering it to a print out anyway. so we can get our feet wet in parsing this information and starting to transform it into a game. So, thanks for watching. Check out the next one. Peace.